defeating the Memphis Grizzlies 122-107, kind of a ho-hum. Had it all the way sort of affair, but still a lot of good things to talk about. And we know where we are right now.
It's a big game for the Grizzlies. It's more than a ho-hum win.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But the Celtics comfortably had this one.
Yeah.
It just never felt threatened. Yeah.
That's the impressive part, is that this game meant everything to the Grizzlies. They're hanging on to that 8th seed there, clinging on to it. And the Celtics, for all intents and purposes, are in that, it's going to take a lot for them to not play the Sixers. They're obviously locked in the 3rd seed. It looks like they're going to play the Sixers. But, there they are, going at it all 4 quarters. And really looked like the, clear and cut better team than the Western Conference Grizzlies from start to finish. I mean, obviously, Grizzlies went on a tiny little run in the 3rd quarter. That's the NBA. That's going to happen all the time. But good on the Celtics for, keeping it at that length from, after that early run that really distanced them. They kept it at a good length the whole way through.
You did have that one moment where you had Bobby's boy Cantor there with that flagrant situation that could have turned into like a 6-point.
He's not telling himself to me.
And that was a tough one. But yeah, I don't know what to talk about first here. It's either going to be
I think
whether or not Brian Scalabrine actually invented the Stash Gordon nickname, which I'm not sure, or why Grayson Allen is such a dink all these years after leaving Duke. I don't know which one's the bigger story.
He had a couple of Duke Grayson moments in this one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I
can't stand him.
The blood still, my blood level still elevated when I watch this guy, and there's no reason to hate him anymore. It's a visceral reaction. It happens instantly. That Ted Cruz face, it kills me. Yeah. But yeah, Bobby, why don't you start? What do you like? What do you like about tonight?
Love the bench. I thought the starters early in this game were pretty sluggish, especially into the 3rd quarter too. They kind of blew it a little bit there. Grizzlies got within 8. And each time that bench rotated in, they just took it to them.
Right.
Wanamaker finishes plus 23. I believe Smart as well, plus 23 in this one. So they dominated the Grizzlies' second unit, and that's where this game reached that ho-hum thing that you talk about. Like, they set that standard, the gap between the two teams. It wasn't quite a magic level effort, like you say, Jimmy, with the team coming in here with a ton to play for on the other end. They look pretty decimated in Memphis with the injuries that they've had between, losing Jay Crowder through a trade and Jaren Jackson now going down for the year. It wasn't.
They lost Jay Crowder.
He was
the Celtics lost Jay Crowder too, man.
It's the Celtics. The
Celtics got smoked by the Heat last week, so there we go with Jay Crowder. But anyway.
Crowder. Yeah.
Hey, I'll give Jay Crowder this. Jay Crowder unseated Jeff Green. So that Jay Crowder ended the Jeff Green era. So I'll give him that. And I liked Jay Crowder on the Celtics, but obviously he was extremely overrated for the Green team.
I was always told all these years. I was told you just can't trade Jay Crowder, and I just can't believe he keeps getting traded because I was certain that was the rule that
he's the glue guy.
You can't trade this guy, right?
Well, the reason Cleveland lost that trade was because those guys pretty much just went in there and sabotaged the team, which is like, that's why you don't do a trade with your chief Eastern Conference competitor, but whatever. Both teams lost that one. The bench was important in this one because we have 3 games on tape pretty much of them having a legitimate, impactful bench through the Nets game, which was kind of a clunker too, and then into 2 of the more, competitive ones the last 2 nights. But now we have 4 games in a row where the bench made a massive impact. Like, we're not just getting, a little bit of contribution on the bench. The bench is riding them through some tough stretches right now.
Yeah.
And that's what – sorry, you go, John.
Go, you get him, Jimmy.
No, I was just going to say that's been my chief concern is, and I think, John, you can agree with me, is we were wondering, what's this team's depth really look like after Marcus Smart? They've got 5-6 guys. And then after that, it's a bunch of, first, second year guys that, haven't shown anything, haven't really proven anything. And lately, all of a sudden, Robert Williams kind of comes out of nowhere and he's giving you, a good 10, 15 minutes off the bench.
Been there the whole time, Jimmy.
Been there the whole time just to give 5 fouls, but now he's actually giving you, a point or a rebound here and there. But it's good to see that. I mean, obviously we know what Marcus Smart can do off off the bench. Cantor,
Yeah. And Brad's clearly going to play the rotation. Clearly going to play matchups here again tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight you saw Cantor and Grant Williams coming in first. Where Rob had been getting first quarter minutes, in the first big off the bench, and he went with Cantor and he went with Grant, and then Rob came in to start the second quarter. Immediate impact, 2 blocks right away and a dunk. I mean, the only shot he missed again was a highlight level one-handed alley-oop dunk, but he was there. But again, it's playing the matchups. No Semi, no Langford, really. I mean,
right.
for them, and a lot of Wanamaker, a lot of Smart, and it worked. I mean, he did what again. This was what this game called for, I guess, or maybe he's just still fiddling. I don't know. Like Bobby, do you think this was a matchup bench game, or Brad's just kind of messing with combos? Like, do you think he brought Cantor and Williams off the bench first today to see what they had, or that was the plan?
I think it's both. He's experimenting with the Grant angle there. Can I get this guy some minutes at the 4? Because especially round 1, it doesn't look like you'll be able to play Grant at a 5 against Philly unless it's with like a second unit or something. So if Grant's going to get any minutes, he'll have to be at the 4. But here, it didn't look better than what Semi had been giving them recently. Like, it really still is an interesting conversation.
Semi was good
last
8th game.
Spot on the bench. Yeah, I think he was on a 9 for 23 point stretch. Yeah. So he got his shot down, was impacting defensively as he always does. Yeah. So that 8th spot's going to be interesting, but it is still a matchup game for them. So I'm interested. We'll get to that Philly matchup that's looking likely later, but you would think that Cantor, who's been good against Philly, will get that first stretch off the bench for them in that series, and then find Rob minutes where you may. But Rob is certainly the biggest story on this team.
Cantor was good tonight, Bobby.
Was he?
Yes, he was good tonight. So again, it's I just think you're always looking at it. What's the opposite of rose-colored glasses? Whatever it is.
I don't hate him either.
He was good. Offensive boards.
You can't trust your opinion on him.
He was a plus something. He was part of that second unit.
He was plus 5, yeah.
Plus more than that. And I thought he was better than that.
Once they got in the
plus 12, plus 12.
All right,
11 points
enough.
plus 12, and he was part of that unit that kind of helped kick it into that, into the lead where they just kind of ran away. But he was good. Again, he gave you what the game needed. Again, so much of this comes down to Brad picking the right spots for his minutes.
And in the second half, he did that for sure.
And the second half again. Second half, he was solid.
First half, I felt like John Morant was hitting him a little bit, but they do manage it well. I'll give Brad that. Like, they do find 15 minutes to get 11 points out of him, 8 rebounds in that very limited window there is definitely great management, because if you leave him in a little too long, I think it can go in the other direction. But is there going to be enough minutes for 3 centers to get steady run like that in the playoffs?
You don't need it. That's exactly what you don't want. You want to play it this way. If Tice isn't getting chewed up by a much larger big, you want to give him whatever minutes he's going to get there, and then you want to play matchups and make sure you don't put Cantor in a position where he's going to get murdered on pick and rolls, and he can just go in there and at least play even, where he's going to give you the offensive boards and possibly a little bit in the post, or like tonight, give you that boost, and then you bring in Rob as well as an energy guy. The lobs, I love Smart and Rob together. I mean,
in the second half,
they run that well, and he's looking for him. And again, Scal said it a bunch of times in the broadcast. We keep going back to Rob, but the game is way, way slower for him for sure. He doesn't look lost or overwhelmed. He had a good catch and a wait and a fake and an up, for he got to the free throw line one time where it was just kind of like, I'm going to take my time with this. And he did. And all of that stuff, he's not just nervously either looking to bring it up or just kick it back out. He's got a better understanding of what's going on around him. Jimmy.
Yeah, no, it feels like, if Brad Stevens gives you a book of the NBA, he basically ripped out 4 pages and gave it to Robert Williams. It was like, this is all we need you to do. So just do this, and don't think about doing all these other things, because we don't need this of you, and we don't expect this of you. Just do what you do well. Do your job, I guess, right? Yep. And it looks like he's starting to get that. Like you said, John, he's looking for not that he hasn't always looked for the alley-oop, but he looks more confident out there. He looks like he knows where his spots are. He's not late. He's not slow. Yeah. Like he looked like he was to start the year. And I think that comes with experience. And I noticed that a lot of his teammates, before we saw it, looked like a lot of his teammates were pumping him up, right? In practice and whatnot. You got a lot of quotes on, Robert Williams did this, Robert Williams did that. And I was just like, well, I can't wait to see it, because I'm hearing about it. But it looks like, it wasn't just them, blowing smoke. Like it actually, he is capable of doing
and it's
things.
all of it too. It's like the stroke, even the free throws. Again tonight he was just, I think, one free throw. It's an and one, but it's just pop. It's just a smooth looking.
Short on one.
Oh, was he short on one? He just looks different. It's he looks good enough.
I agree.
You wish you could almost get a look into what some of these guys were doing during the break, because this was a full off season. We see what's going on with the Suns. We see what's going on with TJ Warren, and then even Williams and Wanamaker on the Celtics. Some guys just came into this. Maybe it's the environment. Maybe that has something to do with it. But some players, some teams are looking like completely new versions of themselves, and it's not all that surprising considering that it was a full off season. I guess the only thing is that you couldn't be with your team. You couldn't be in facilities. So guys kind of had to make this happen on their own, and you can see who did.
And that's the thing. You could have guys, like the Celtics have seen it twice. They have guys who made two leaps this year from the last season into this year, and then again during the year. Tatum did it in the middle of the year, around the All-Star break, where he made that leap just mid-season into a different guy. Jalen did it entering the year, and then he did it again entering the bubble. So it's almost like, because you're right, it's a whole off-season. Think about that. You come back late. How many guys come back and they are a totally different player than they were the last time you saw them a few months prior? You could be seeing that with Rob Williams, who might essentially be a year further along in his development than he was when last we saw him. And would it be totally surprising if this season went off normally, we came back next year, and this is the first guy we saw in November? No, it'd be like, this looks good. And so that could be what's happening here.
Yeah, it says a lot about this team, like their character and like these players' work ethics. Like, John, I mean, you remember Vin Baker. I mean, can you imagine Vin Baker coming back from a 3-month mid-season break? Or
no, this
Mark
is
Mark
no.
Blount?
Sadly, Vin Baker needed more coffee and.
Well,
Jameson in the coffee.
People talk about the matchups. We've gone crazy about, we got the worst 8 teams out of here, and that's why this play's been so amazing. But it feels like 80%, maybe 85% of the league came back ready to roll, in better shape than ever before because they hadn't been playing games, and at a new level in terms of skill too. Even though guys didn't have baskets, like a Hayward, like he looks like the best version of himself coming out here skill-wise.
Should we talk? Gordon Hayward needs. I'm sure he has a great family and he loves his family, but he needs to play the rest of his career like in isolation from his family. 'Cause this is the best. This is the best Gordon Hayward like we've seen.
We figured it out.
Dunk? Oh my lord!
We figured it out.
Maybe it wasn't the injury. Maybe it was just,
Robin,
busy being a dad, off the court.
I was saying, imagine fall of 18 seeing the dunk he had today. Like,
your wife
we never thought we were going to see
out
that
of
again.
town for a week, and you're just living your best life.
He's on the sticks at night. That's fine.
I'm growing it. I don't care. I'm doing it.
The mustache, the video games, and basketball. Like, this dude's living back in high school again or college.
Can you explain the nickname? Was the nickname a reference or something, John? I saw you tweeting about that.
Okay, so Stash Gordon. This is the controversy of the night, and I'm sure it's going to be investigated. But it's Flash Gordon, okay? That's the reference, okay? And so it's an old school thing. Even Mike was like, "Wow, Scal, I didn't think." But it's a cool reference and a great
Tom
nickname.
Gordon.
And I'm honestly, as a person who does this for a living, I'm really mad I didn't come up with it myself. So part of it is jealousy. The second is I don't think Scal did it. I think he poached it. I think this could be Max. This could be somebody in the newsroom.
Because I don't think Scal knows who Flash Gordon is.
I don't know.
Like, he wasn't.
I don't.
Flash Gordon was before Scal's time.
I know, but still, it's a cool pop culture reference, albeit an old one. And
I like it.
We might have to tap in the Max and see what's going on there.
And so I am dubious. I am wondering whether he came up with that on the fly, because Gorman was like, "Did you get that? Was that your own?" And he's like, yeah."
He saw it on Twitter somewhere. That's a weird Celtics tweet.
That's him co-opting. That's him co-opting Time Lord, and not fully understanding that reference too. Somewhere, somebody put Stash Gordon in a tweet, and I think he plucked it.
Every level too. The broadcast booth's gotten a little bit better as this has gone along, because we
got Kirk yelling at them in Zoom.
Oh man, one of the early things I noticed with that though is they're not there, so they don't hear the whistle. So like the first game or two, they were missing foul calls. Like, it was real sloppy, and now they're coming along a little bit. It's not easy. You can tell you're because you got to trust what you see, and it's
Good for them. Let's get into, let's hit it and quit it real quick. We didn't talk about Tatum. Again,
we have to. We gave him a lot of crap after game 1.
Yeah.
And, but what we said was we just want to see it, and, we're seeing it.
And like, you had a couple.
Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
This wasn't just tonight, but, like, this is what you'd want to see, because he's not going to play Thursday. This is the game you want to see him, and same with Kemba. Kemba had a really good shooting night. You want to see this going into the playoffs. So I think, everyone has to be happy with what they saw out of Tatum, for sure. This whole, overall, the whole stretch.
Yeah.
He's got a little more responsibility on the ball. I thought he had a few rough turnovers in this one. I think he finished with 5, but overall, great. He's recovered. I was one of the ones worried after that first game, seeing him with the finishes and all that stuff. But he's been great ever since probably that Miami-Portland stretch there. So 6 out of 7.
He can play golf tomorrow. We'll let him.
Yeah, that's fine. This was effortless, though. I mean, this easy. I mean, this is one of those nights. If they wanted to, and they pushed it, he could have hit 60. I mean, he could not miss. He wasn't even touching the rim.
He's pushing 50% from 3 now in the bubble.
Yeah, he was. Wow. He could not miss tonight. If they fed him, if he took 25 shots tonight, he could have scored 50 plus. He was, or if they needed it, ridiculously good. So again, that's who you want. You need the assassin Tatum there. And we've seen it exactly where we've needed him. You saw him as a closer in a game where he didn't have an awesome shooting night, but he got you the buckets late. You see a night like this where when this is going, they can't lose games when he's playing like this. It's efficient. They're impossible to stop, right?
Since that Bucks game, hit 25 points a game, over 50 from the field, pushing 50 from 3. That's great.
Yeah. And the Celtics have bought in like crazy. They had another 29 assist night. They're averaging close to 30 assists the last 4 or 5 games here, which is crazy. We talk about the ball movement, but they've just been going nuts with that the last few games. Even in one of the post games, Kemba was just saying on the post game press conference down in Orlando that they're too unselfish at times. I think actually Kemba's the one who gets hurt the most with that. Because he's not doing his little ISO. I'm going to dribble it out and find my shot thing. And when it finds its way into other people, oftentimes it gets swung to somebody who's open, or Tatum, who will recognize that I'm going to just beat my guy here. But I think it's at the expense of some of Kemba's shots. Yeah,
you're not getting like hero Kemba like you did in Charlotte, and there's countless highlights of him taking on that role in Charlotte. And I mean, nothing wrong with that because he's been known to hit a lot of those shots. Tonight you saw flashes of it. I mean, he had that really nice step back there. I think it was in the fourth quarter. That kind of, I think the game was pretty far out of reach at that point, but it was just a really nice, like, he drove to the hoop, step forward, back,
step,
and,
bang.
I'm looking at the knee,
this much separation,
don't explode, and and Drano. So, he looks like, I mean, from where he was at the start of, didn't even play in the first game, right? And where he is now. What?
I was gonna say he was out there in that first game.
He was, but it was.
I meant the preseason.
Oh, all right, yep.
Right. Yeah. From that, very beginning to where he is now, where you're counting on 30 minutes, and Kemba, looking like Kemba. I mean, really, this team is really in a great spot, going into the playoffs here. Yeah,
it was 28 minutes, totally ho hum. He could have easily played 30 to 35 if they needed it tonight.
He could have probably scored another 10, 12 points.
I'm glad you bring up
that's the thing is like, you'd feel worse if Jason was limited or Jalen or somebody, but Kemba's that guy who you think you can actually get away with 30 for him because you can bring in Smart and you can run your offense through him and play with all of your wings, and you're okay because you're not going to run into that. It's not that when Kyrie was off the floor, nobody knew what to do with the ball and nobody could score. You have now Tatum, you have other people who the offense can run through them. So I think you can get away with Kemba even at 32 minutes a game and not be like, this doesn't feel like enough. I don't think he needs to be out there 38, 39, 40 minutes.
We haven't got to see him.
40, no.
I'm interested in seeing him when they get down in a game big and he's able to play that fourth quarter because it was a situation against Miami. Portland to some degree too, when they were in trouble late in that game. That's when he was on that minutes restriction. He couldn't play those big minutes. But I think of a game like the Bucks earlier in the year when he had 40. They're way down in that game. He plays big minutes into the later stretches and gets them back into it. I'm glad you bring up that old Charlotte explosive, Kemba, Jimmy, because we haven't seen him a ton in Boston, but I think it's still there. He can just read these situations and react accordingly.
Yep. Before we move, Jimmy, any final thoughts? I got one more thing on this game before we move to Philly. Anything for you?
On this specific game? No,
I got one thing. Okay.
Yeah,
so we talked about this, I think, heading into the game a little bit, but it's hard not to see it because we've talked about how Grant Williams, minutes have been, reduced. He's not super effective. We can't figure out if he's a 3 or a 4 or where to play him. And then you see, the Brandon Clarke thing. Again, Brandon Clarke's not setting the world on fire. He's not going to make a million All-Star games, but I'm always going to that one's always going to be a head scratcher for me. And you never want to second guess a draft 1 year into a situation where it's not so clear cut. I didn't understand it then. I still don't understand it now. I think from what the Celtics were looking for, energy, athleticism, transition, somebody who will grab boards, it just seems like Clarke superficially fit that mold and was a good kid, and they went with Williams, and it irks me a little. It irks me.
Yeah, Bob, what do you?
I was thinking about him at that 14th spot then too, because he fell. Like he was way down at 21st.
I couldn't believe it. You were like, oh great, that's a guy you would have taken there,
Yeah, and then you get the 2 stabs to take him, right? So he fit a position of need. I know that Danny never drafts the need. It's always like the best prospect available. But right here, when these two are head to head as they were, it was an interesting discussion. Now, I know they love Grant, and Grant's had a good year. Like you look at this year on a whole for a rookie and how much he's contributed. I think it's good for a guy deep in the draft. But Clarke, he almost fills that Marcus Morris hole that they, left off the bench when he departed. A guy who can score a little bit, has size, can defend on the wings. Really just fits everything they're looking for there. And now you get Grant,
switchable. He can play in that switchable sort of offense. He could play the 5 in a small ball offensive set if you needed to. I think it fits so much of what they do.
Yeah, and he was phenomenal in college too. This was an easy guy to miss.
I can't figure out Danny Ainge's what's important to Danny Ainge sometimes. Maybe Grant crushed. Maybe they had some sort of interview and he absolutely crushed it. He's a personable guy. He's a smart kid. He probably has a high basketball IQ, but you don't ever.
He's brilliant. He said
you don't get the impression that he's ever gonna have the ability to take over a game or be like the one of the stars of the team. He seems like he's going to be like a role player on a good team, which is what these Celtics are. So. Yeah. Maybe there is a good role for him on a team like this.
Remember,
but the upside doesn't feel like
he feels like a second-round talent. If you couldn't get Grant Williams, you could get a Grant Williams type. It feels like
I'll say this,
second
John,
round, less athletic, without a position, all the intangibles.
If he had a better outside shot,
or
we're not even talking about him. Yeah, it feels like he's almost kind of like Big Baby without the range. Almost.
Yeah, I don't know.
What was interesting, John? They hit this on the time. It feels like forever ago now, but they were looking for the good guys, right? They were talking about that a lot on that day.
And he fits that because
and all 4 of those guys did end up fitting that to a T. I think they've all helped in that regard. Now, again, that's not why they have.
Where do nice guys finish, Bobby?
Well, that's Cantor too. That's like they've done the chemistry thing largest year, and that's not why they're third in the East. That's Tatum, that's Kemba, that's Brown, all that. But I'm sure it didn't hurt having a good room, and they definitely have a good room. Yeah, no, and again, we're not talking, bust or anything. No. It's just, like I said, it's no. The one that irks me still is Romeo.
But they wanted Hero, and they missed. And for them, from everything I've heard, it was Hero was in that upper tier where they were like, if we get that guy, we're thrilled. And then they might as well have been picking 10 picks later because everybody was the same, So there was a big drop in their board from the guy who went right before Romeo to Romeo, and that was a real devastating one. At least the way they saw it, they wanted him bad, didn't get him, and then I think, like I said, the next 10, 15 guys were the same guy. They could have taken
lots
any
of
of them.
second guesses from last year. I mean, maybe if you trade a guy like Rozier last year, all of a sudden you drop that extra spot. Like we came out of last year pretty good, the Celtics that is, but there's still a lot of lingering effects of the damage that last year did on this team. And part of it was, you're picking much later because they were actually a pretty good team last year, even though they stunk.
I mean, look, we are now a game away from the end of the regular season, and considering the vibe around this team, after Kyrie left and after Horford kicked him in the whatever, and then a draft that wasn't super great, with no true stars. Yeah. And Kemba was the consolation prize. Kemba and Cantor, we were like, oh my God,
Kemba was huge.
He was. What I'm saying is, you brought Kemba and Cantor to replace Horford and Kyrie, and you're like, it was a tough sell.
Everyone was saying this is a notch
bridge
below.
year.
Yeah, exactly. This is not going to be talent-wise. Everyone was freaking out about Al Horford leaving, and there was nobody to fill that void. And I mean, if you go ask everybody else now, like they would do, they would obviously do it all over.
All in all, it feels like they have a legit chance to make the finals now, and that wasn't on anyone's radar going in.
No, not at all. And again, it's it's a totally different vibe around the team. They're going to finish with almost exactly the same record year over year, so nothing was lost there. And it just feels like it's altogether better. Let's move on. We know where we are now. I think the scenario is there's 2 games to play for Philly and Indiana, and Philly needs to win both.
Philly needs to win both,
and Indy needs to lose both. So the Celtics are pretty much locked in here. Now, we've talked about it because, they've been on a collision course this whole time, and it looks like it's staying there. This is definitely Miami's out now, so Indiana's still possible. Miami's not possible.
Right.
This is definitely the matchup you want here.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what do you think?
Sure. I mean, it is because Simmons is out, right? So that's kind of a bummer. I mean, I hate when great players, get hurt. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're on the Lakers, the Sixers, you want your best to go up against their best. That being said, if Simmons was playing, it'd still be a great match. It'd still be a fun, great matchup. I'd still have the Celtics winning it, but obviously with Simmons out there, the Sixers are super talented. Now they get to but they get to throw Al Horford in there at the point forward position, and I think that Al Horford is going to be a lot more effective for them in that role than the role that he was in. Coming off the bench, clearly, because he, never seemed to take to that role with them. So I'm interested to see sort of like the young grasshopper Jason Tatum going up against Al Horford in a lot of situations out there, or whatever young player you want to put up against Al. But it's going to be a fun matchup. Embiid seems like a guy that they can get under his skin, and they have gotten under his skin. So I expect that I expect them to poke him a little bit. And just see where it goes, but I like the Celtics in the series.
I'm going to see some of our chat here. We've got Rob Williams is our next Bill Russell.
There we go.
We got this. Grant Williams is like a Brandon Bass type.
I'd be happy with that.
Bass could shoot, man. Bass could shoot though.
Yeah. He could. Yeah, and he was way more athletic.
He was ripped.
Grant Shaw could come.
Grant Williams will be good, says Drew. Okay, so give him a few years.
We don't think he'll be bad. We're not saying he's,
No, I think the tough thing for Grant is that he was part of the rotation firmly in March, and now it doesn't feel like he's in it at all. So that was a tough regression to take.
Yeah.
But, you get Rob out of it, so nice trade-off.
Yeah. So that's something.
A lot of Grant talk. Huh?
A lot of Grant. Some Grant defenders here.
He's a great defender. Like, all in all, for a rookie year, he was excellent. Like, there's not a lot to smear at there. I still look at the Romeo one and feel worse about that. But
yeah.
I just want to make a complete the 8-man Cantor.
So we've got somebody here that thinks
Cantor's not out.
That thinks Williams has supplanted Cantor in the 8-man.
No, Cantor's in, especially for Philly.
Yeah, and again, Ainge, brilliant for matching that Horford This is Jordan Davis. Not matching the Horford contract. We talked about that. I don't know if it was brilliant. I think Danny shoved all his chips in the middle on that one and did everything he could to get him.
Yeah.
They almost pulled a Mark Cuban and friggin' went to kidnap him and throw him in a room, to not sign that deal. And it just worked out that way.
I think even Ainge will admit he would have re-signed Irving too if he was willing to come back. Like this, it's that thing we talked about, John, where the things that don't happen end up leading to the best outcomes.
Right. Right. I mean, I think Al Horford had a deal in place with Philly before, like he was set on, he was leaving Boston. It felt like, he didn't like what he saw. He didn't like the direction the team was going. He knew Kyrie was out. He didn't want to be a part of what he probably thought was going to be, a few years of just, average at best basketball. He was wrong, but he cashed in, and whatever.
Yeah, and I believe there's a lot to it. I believe there was the whole, tired of playing the 5, didn't want to bang anymore.
Sure.
Great.
KG hated
money.
Yeah, he was the Embiid, kind of kryptonite, or the good matchup there. But he just didn't want to do it. Right. I'm gonna take the easy ride. I'm gonna play out. Can I camp out here at the 3-point land? I'm gonna take money, and I'm gonna I'm gonna call it a day. And
he got $130 million too,
and the Sixers have a talented roster. They just have had trouble putting it all together, getting along, staying healthy.
Isn't it the best? Again. Yeah, isn't it great?
So my thought was Philly.
Are they? So my question, objectively, if you ask the world, who do you root harder against, Philly or the Celtics? I mean, Boston teams in general, because Boston's obnoxious and wins everything.
Sure.
But this Philly team is easier to hate, right?
Oh, especially because
definitely.
They have.
I don't think the Celtics players are that hateable.
No, they're really likable. They're
pretty likable. Yeah, there's no drama. Like they're smart. They're personable. They seem like good dudes off the court, and they're good and they're fun. They're fun to watch. So the Sixers. Every time you hear about the Sixers, it's crying about something, whether it's Embiid, Simmons, dating this model or whoever, and it's not always. It doesn't seem like it's ever about basketball.
We saw a lot of it last year, Jimmy.
It reminds me of those Wizards teams from the years that they were always talking themselves up and never had the results there, and then they ended up losing Isaiah and company. It's just always talk rather than results, especially from the head coaching spot. And I don't think Brown's terrible, but they always have. Yeah. They always have something solved. Like every time, it's just like the smirk and like we figured it out. And you can't blame them for the injury there to Simmons. Like that's a devastating blow to a team.
That's tough.
When they can't get around. But they had the ability to be an all-time defensive team this year with the personnel that they had, and instead they ended up being poor. Like that's a reason to hate them. And the whole Embiid thing still. I think this is still a series that could fire up the Celtics from that perspective.
I can't tell if Embiid is likable or hateable. Because I find it's a little of both. He amuses me, and I like that he's honest with so many things.
Yeah.
He's fun. He's really fun to watch. He's one of the best players to watch in person if you get the opportunity. But personality, and he's personable. He's funny on Twitter, all that stuff. But he's got the Draymond Green factor. Like he makes you want to make your skin crawl sometimes. But that's part of being a superstar, right?
Yep.
Kind of like part of the deal. So I'm sure he embraces it, and it just is what it is.
See, the fearful part of me inside is like, all right, this is a team that there's not a lot of film out there on. All of a sudden, they're going to be playing these completely different lineups without Simmons. Maybe that smacks the Celtics, and they're unprepared, and maybe they even get a little overconfident coming into this one with that injury.
Yeah.
But honestly, I look at the personnel, and I know they didn't play a lot of people today, but Thibault's all right. The Tom Burks, Shake. It's not great. There's just a talent gap there between the Celtics and them.
Yeah, this is, again, you got to play someone. And, anybody in that top 6, if the Celtics didn't get to that 2 seed, you knew they'd be playing a quality opponent. So,
I might take the Celtics in 5 again.
Yeah, so
just
it's possible.
The other year.
Yeah, but you knew if they're locked into the 3, they were getting a quality first-round opponent. And right now, between those teams, it looks like Philly's kind of a wounded animal here. So that's it, guys. We're going to wrap it up. We've got one more, a noon start. Are we really going to do this?
No.
All of you guys bowed out already.
We're also going to the depth of the roster.
It might just be Bobby staring straight into the camera, talking about rotations.
This is going to be a Taco Fall highlight reel. Is what we're going to do. We're just going to illegally blast footage out there of Taco Fall.
Yeah, but that's it. We got one, and then it's playoff time. The Bruins are going to be playing in the playoffs. Anybody here who's watching? Also a hockey fan. We're going to have a lot of Bruins coverage as well later on tonight. Yeah. We might even do this as well. So stick around for that. Right now, you've got,
Bruins are going to be on late tonight because the game before them went into triple overtime.
It's 4th overtime.
Oh,
it's in 4
are they
overtime?
doing? Are they doing the college thing where you got to wait to get on the ice?
4 overtimes.
Well, that ice is going to be absolute trash.
Oh my
right?
God! But imagine
Lord.
that. Like, hey, take a few months off, play a couple scrimmages, and then your first real game, play 2.5 games.
Yeah.
You know? Oh my goodness gracious! So,
but then the Bruins go out there with. I mean, can't imagine they're going to have all the ice repaired. You know, it's going to be. I don't know.
It's going to be
Ooh,
gross.
They'll be playing at midnight.
We'll let those guys talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have more coverage on CLNS for Bobby Manning, Jimmy Toscano. We will see you guys on Friday.